Good evening, everyone. This week we're in Parshas Sisa. The Parsha mentions the making of the anointing oil, the Shemen HaMishcha, which the Yidden needed to make. It was spiced oil that developed fragrance from different roots and different spices. And they used this to anoint and smear some onto all of the different kalim in the Mishkan, on all the krushim, all the beams and pillars of the Mishkan, and on all of the kayanim before they were fit for service. And the Torah says you need to take a hin of this oil and mix it with these spices. And Rashi quotes a debate between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about how exactly they would make this mixture. Reb Meir said they would mix this oil, which was around a hin, I think roughly should be around 144 fluid ounces. Maybe that's a big bottle's worth. They would take this oil, mix it with the spices, and cook them together, and that would be the anointing oil. Rabbi Yehuda argued back. He said, if you're going to take that amount of oil, mix it with spices, and cook them, you're not going to be left with a lot of oil to use for smearing, to use for anointing. Rather, they would mix the roots with water, and they'd sit the oil on top of the water and the spices, which would boil. The steam would elevate. It would go into the oil, and the oil would absorb the fragrances, but at least it would remain pure oil that they could use for smearing on the entire Mishkan. Now the question is, what does Reb Meir have to say back to that? How would that work out to take that much oil, mix it with spices, and to have any oil left to use for anointing? So the Rebbe explains this debate as a way of showing us two different ways of approaching life. And here it goes. What the Torah says about the Shemen HaMishcha, I'll read the pasuk. It says, "Sisa Shemen Mishchas Kodesh." You should make this oil, which will be oil for holy anointing. It should be a rekach merkachas. It should be a compound mixture. Shemen Mishchas Kodesh Yiyah. It should be holy anointing oil. Holy anointing oil to be made as a compound mixture. It should be a holy anointing oil. So Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda debate which part of this pasuk is primary. Reb Meir, let's start this way. Reb Meir is of the opinion that we deal with the present. Torah says, I have holy anointing oil, that what do I need to do with it now? I need to make a compound mixture with it. So what does that mean? That means I need to take this oil, mix it with these spices, and make a compound mixture out of it. The end result means it's not going to be so oily, it's going to be a oil, root, spice mixture, not just oil. That's fine. But if Torah told me that I need to do something with the oil in the present, I need to deal with the present, not based on what the outcome is going to be in the future. Maybe it's not going to be so oily, but I need to do with the oil what Torah says I need to do with it, without thinking about the result. Rabbi Yehuda says no. If the result will be that it's not going to be oily, that means right now I need to deal with the present differently. Because Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion we don't just deal with the present with not thinking about the future. We deal with the present for measured by what is this going to lead to in the future. And these are two types of general personalities. The Rebbe shows how in another debate you have Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda holding the same two ways. How much does one need to eat to be chayiv in a mezumin? The Gemara in Brachas discusses this. Reb Meir says v'alchalta. How much do you need to eat to be considered eating halachically? A kazayis, the amount of an olive. Rabbi Yehuda says, it doesn't just say v'achalta, it says v'achalta v'savata. You should eat and be satisfied, which is more than a kazayis, that's a kabetza, which is double a kazayis. In other words, Reb Meir says eating is defined by the present. Well, if I'm eating now, then that's considered eating, and I would need to be part of the mezumin. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, don't just define the present based on the present. Define the present based on the future. If you're going to eat now and not become full, that's not really considered eating. Eating means I'm eating now, and that's going to last me and sustain me till I become full. And therefore, he says you need a kabetza. And this, says the Rebbe, is two general ways of approaching life. You have some people that are good task-based workers, that are good managers, just what's in front of me and let me deal with it. And you have some people that are more visionary and more developers, which is they're almost not even seeing what is exactly in front of them. They're seeing, how can I develop this to be something better? How can I seeing things based on their potential and seeing what could be, and dealing with things based on what could be, not necessarily dealing with things based on what is. And each of these two personality types and working types have a pro that the other one doesn't have. And the truth is in our Judaism, and Rashi leaves this open-ended and says that there's just two approaches, is sometimes we need to deal with things based on what is. Torah says this and this is the halacha. I need to follow the halacha. Maybe it's going to have not good results. I'm going to burn out if I follow it exactly this way. Okay, but that's God's will, and we need to deal with the present. Let's say education, on the other hand, one may argue, and I'm definitely of this opinion too, that you don't necessarily need to deal. What's not important is dealing with the present per se, but it's dealing with this person. Chanech lenar al pi darkai, deal with this person based on who he is. Gam ki yazkin leyasser mimena, so that in the future he's going to stick with it. In other words, dealing with the present, not just based on the present and how good can I make it look in the present, but dealing with the present and this person based on how will this last with him for the future. And all of us in our lives need to weigh. Sometimes we need to deal, and I don't know if there's a simple answer when we say what, but sometimes we need to deal with decisions based on what is, and not think about what's going to happen with it in the future. Like Reb Meir's opinion, you take oil, mix it with spices. Who cares if it's not going to be so oily in the future? And sometimes we need to make decisions not just dealing narrowly with what's in front of us, but dealing with things based on what they will end up being in the future. And that's the hira of this fascinating machlekes. Have a great Shabbos.